You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. Well, today it's March 7th, 2022. Markets spinning out of control. Gold getting close to an all-time high. Copper already hit an all-time high. Well, here to discuss is John Rubino, dollarcollapse.com. Happy Monday, John. Don't you feel like we're kind of in the box seats of Yankee Stadium for the last game of the World Series? And we're getting to like micro observe like every little mistake, every strike that's called as a ball and ball that's called as a strike. We're kind of like watching all this with not shock, but dismay, I guess.
Hey, Kerry. Well, all the mistakes we've been pointing out for years and years are finally coming home to roost. So we're going to have a really dense show today where we point out all the horrendous mistakes that are being made and have been made. But before we start, I need to say I misspoke last week about cryptos, which I have a tendency to do. I said that Canada had not just blocked, but confiscated some Bitcoin wallets, and they didn't do that. They blocked some wallets from access to some exchanges. So they haven't yet, or the establishment hasn't yet figured out how to go in and take over Bitcoin wallets. So sorry about that, guys. Now, on to what we're seeing today. Astounding, all the stuff that's going wrong out there right now. Every commodity you can think of except for silver, and I think that'll catch up pretty soon, is spiking to ridiculous levels. And inflation. We got an inflation report this week that is going to show 8% or so, according to the consensus. At the same time, the Fed is meeting shortly, and it's going to have to decide whether to raise interest rates or not. In the face of all these spiking commodities, which will end up being deflationary if they're allowed to run, and the Russia-Ukraine thing. So I've never envied those guys, having to make the decisions they make. But now more than ever, it almost doesn't matter what the Fed does, because whatever they do, horrible things are going to happen afterwards, and they're going to get blamed for it. So they could just pack up and go home, and the world would be no worse than it's going to be with those guys paying attention and trying to intervene.
Sometimes the best decision that you can make is to make no decision at all. But then they'll be blamed that they didn't make a decision, even though they have no decision that they really are free to make. And because the global financial system's kind of disintegrating before our very eyes, there's probably little that they can really do anyway, John.
Well, the arsonists started the fire. And now they would really like to come in and put out the fire and be hailed as heroes for it, but they don't know how to do it. They cannot put this fire out. It's only going to get bigger. And a lot of what they do is liable to actually make it bigger in a really public way. So poetic justice. It's way, way, way overdue, because Alan Greenspan and Ben Bernanke are not going to be put into prison over this, as they should have been a long time ago if we understood what they were doing. So now the current guys are going to suffer badly when it turns out that they don't have the faintest idea how to fix our problems. But it won't be all their fault. They're part of the system. They contributed to it and everything, but they came along after a huge part of the damage was already done by these morons, these globalist idiots, starting in the 1990s and continuing to the present day.
Yeah, well, you see the logical conclusion of globalism, of central planning, all these things. And well, what I find interesting, though, is I don't know what's happening in the war because everybody's lying about it. All I know is that the war is still going on, and every day it goes on, probably not what Putin had planned.
Well, yeah, he probably thought he was just going to roll right in there and Ukraine would collapse. So now he's kind of bogged down. That doesn't mean they don't have the firepower to just, level some cities until everybody's, gives up. But in the meantime, Russia is suffering. The ruble is collapsing, and Russian bonds are going to default pretty soon. And Russian stocks are down by 90% on a lot of foreign exchanges, or they've just been kicked off those exchanges. So it's pretty serious for Putin too. And he's got an incentive to settle, which means they probably will. Some morning we're going to wake up very shortly, I think. And it'll turn out that during the night, Ukraine promised not to join NATO, and Russia said okay and started pulling the troops out, and it's over. This is not going to be Vietnam that goes on for 8 years or 10 years. And when that happens, we'll probably see a relief rally in a lot of these markets that are getting whacked. But the damage is so much deeper than Russia, Ukraine. To get back to the globalist morons that have designed the current world. They set up a system of supply chains that extend from one country to another country to another country to another country to the final market. And that worked well for a while. But now when there's a crisis, like the Ukraine-Russia crisis, these same morons think that they can impose sanctions on a country that's not behaving the way they want them to behave, and that we are okay when that happens. But what turns out is that whoever we impose sanctions on, they happen to be part of the supply chain. So somewhere in a crucial supply chain is the stuff that those guys make. We take that out of the equation, the whole thing falls apart. Like one weird one is argon gas. Now, this could be me talking about something I don't understand again, but forgive me. I'll get the broad brush strokes right, hopefully. But argon gas is crucial to chip making, and Russia produces a big part of the world's argon gas. So now we're gonna kick them out of the global financial system and the global supply chains. And what is that going to do to chip making around the world, which is already in shortage? We already can't make enough cars to satisfy demand, and car prices are through the roof because we don't have enough microchips. So now we're going to take a component of microchips out of the system and think that that's okay. These guys don't have the slightest idea what they're doing, and historians are just going to have a field day when they tease out all the misconceptions and stupidities that characterize today's globalism, neo-lib, world empire thinking that dominates the U.S. and Europe, at least.
Hey, let's not forget, John, that basically all the dollars that Russia's getting paid for their oil are useless. They can't spend them. The only thing they could do pretty much is buy gold, right? And it wouldn't surprise me. The rumors were that they were stocking up on gold before, and they're probably buying even more now.
Well, okay, back to the sanctions again. Well, another thing we're doing is kicking Russia out of the SWIFT bank settlement system. In other words, we're telling their banks, you're not allowed to send or receive money via any kind of international mechanism. And that, if nothing else has so far, that should convince a lot of countries that they need to own a ton of gold or hundreds of tons of gold to back up their currency in case they need to just bypass the whole dollar-dominated global financial system, because we can't trust the countries that are running that global financial system to behave. The U.S. uses the dollar and the SWIFT system as a weapon, which means you can't count on your banking system functioning without appeasing the U.S. And as soon as you make the U.S. mad, they kick your banking system out of the global economy. And you have when your banking system is closed out of the global economy in this world, you have an instant recession and mass bankruptcies across the economy. We think we're preserving the current world order, but what we're actually doing is hastening its demise by convincing most of the world that they don't want to be part of it anymore. It's like we talked about last time about the Canadian bank account seizures. Well, what does that do? That doesn't cow the political opposition of the government. It convinces those people to get their money out of Canadian banks, right? And everybody else in the world who's watching that and thinking, wow, if it can happen in Canada, it can certainly happen here. And to do the same thing, so we're bringing about the demise of the current world order by misusing the tools that are at our disposal right now within that world order. And these guys don't see it. It's the weirdest thing to watch somebody just sleepwalking off a cliff and having no idea they're doing it.
It's like they're pouring, they're like those monks during Vietnam, they're pouring lighter fluid over their head and playing with matches at the same time and don't realize that they're going to implode and go up in flames. You know who else pulled out, John, was PayPal, which means that if you're an eBay buyer or seller in Russia, you can no longer buy from eBay unless you can come up with a gift card or something, I guess.
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
American Eagle Gold is focused on exploring for a world-class gold deposit on its flagship property, Golden Gate, located in the Cortez Trend, next door to Barrick Gold and Newmont Mining's Gold Rush and Cortez Mine. They have produced over 27 million ounces of gold. The company plans to drill and advance its relatively unexplored property and continue to focus on acquiring and advancing gold projects in the area. Vice President of Exploration Mark Bradley was at the helm of the team that discovered and defined Gold Rush and has spent the better part of 30 years working on the Cortez Trend. American Eagle trades under the symbol AEG on the TSX Venture. For more information and to sign up for notifications, go to americaneaglegold.ca.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
I think the big U.S. credit cards pulled out of Russia too, right? Visa and MasterCard are no longer there. So yeah, if you're a Russian or a Chinese, because, China would be the next target for all of these financial weapons, you got to be thinking, all right, I need alternatives. I need the Chinese version of Visa or PayPal, and I need to own gold on a vast scale, vaster than anything I've ever thought about before. And I need silver coins, and I need to understand cryptos finally. They're complicated, but I need to figure out how they work, because who knows? I might need to move all my money out of the country at some point and in the process, bypass dollars. So everybody's thinking this stuff, and okay, competition in the monetary sphere is a good thing, but to the extent that they spend a lot of time thinking about alternatives to the dollar, that's time they could have spent doing something creative and productive. So the economy gets a lot less productive and we create a lot less wealth to the extent that we're all trying to figure out how to bypass the system. It's like the time you spend on tax avoidance. That's right. If you spend 2 weeks trying to figure out how not to pay taxes, then that's 2 weeks that you could have made a lot of money doing something else. And maybe society suffers because everybody's trying to do stuff like that. So now we're doing that on a global scale. And it's going to end badly. It's going to end badly. I mean, they could end the Russia-Ukraine thing tomorrow, and we still have all this other stuff out there. The damage is done. We have a national debt in the U.S., total debt of something like $300 trillion on an economy that's maybe 40 trillion, and every other problem that you can name that goes with financial profligacy. That's all out there. That's still going to blow up on us. You remember a few years ago, right, when we were just talking about a big financial crisis coming, and that was it. That was pre-pandemic, Russia and, posturing with nuclear weapons and stuff like that. Now I'm kind of nostalgic for those days when we would just have this financial crisis that we would make a lot of money from, then we would cash out, get back into tech stocks, and normal life would return. This is not going to happen. It's going to be much worse than that, I think.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is the first time in history, basically what the U.S. has done to Russia is what big tech did to Alex Jones. They depersoned him. And what the global financial elite are attempting to do is to decountrify or deplatform Russia, a whole country.
Yes, it's financial cancel culture.
Yeah, financial
cancel culture. Yes. And there's your headline. It's the power may not exist to do that. First of all, I mean, it's wrong, fundamentally wrong to do it, but it might cause more problems than it solves in any event. It's going to make things a lot worse. And I think the same is true with the original cancel culture with big tech censoring everybody, because we're going to find alternatives, and we're already doing it. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I realized that I was giving the optimistic take on this story because most of what I hear is from people like you and Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi and Russell Brand and Jimmy Dore. In other words, reasonable people doing real investigative journalism out there. And so I had developed this sense of the world as a reasonable place because in my little bubble, I was only hearing reasonable voices. And of course, that's wrong. That's not a very big part of the media ecosystem right now. But the point is that if you want to, you can leave the cancel culture dominated by big tech and corporate media. And there's a lot of other places you can go and get good information. So that's the kind of thing that's going to develop some momentum pretty soon. And I think Joe Rogan is already bigger than CNN. And that gap is going to expand going forward to the point where CNN isn't even, their whole lineup isn't worth one Joe Rogan show in terms of viewership and revenue creating capacity. And that's going to be the end for big parts of the corporate media. And that's going to end a big part of cancel culture because they will be deplatformed by the market. And they just won't be able to cancel people's lives anymore because nobody will be listening to them. So, here I am being optimistic again.
Hey,
I gotta watch that because, you shouldn't be optimistic about this world. There are just small parts of the world where things are going right. That's all.
Yeah, well, and we still are moving ahead technologically, whether that's all for the good or not is another story, but things are moving ahead. And, that's just the nature of humanity, that we always find ways to screw things up, but yet in spite of ourselves, we keep moving ahead, progressing.
Well, Kerry, that is not a guarantee. Because, for instance, Caitlin Johnstone, a name I should have mentioned when I was talking about the other interesting media people, she just posted a thing, which I then turned around and posted on dollarclaps.com. It was a big, long kind of poem about how we went extinct out of boredom. We didn't have to do all the stupid stuff we're doing. It's just that, we don't have anything interesting left to do. So we're just destroying all life on this planet out of boredom. And, there are lots of different angles that you can take starting from there. But, we are on the verge of wiping out civilization. If the US and Russia get into a nuclear war, and a huge part of American political culture thinks that we should bomb Russia or impose a no-fly zone over the Ukraine or something like that. It's hard to think of that in any terms other than that these guys are so starved for excitement that they want to see something like this happen because they can't think a nuclear war is a good thing. But they're just, they're not looking that far down the road. They're just saying, look, my life is a mess and I need something to distract me. So let's bomb Ukraine, and it's astounding.
No,
but literally, if a lot of the big names in Congress right now were actually running Congress, we would be funding some kind of no-fly zone over there, and shooting down Russian jets.
So it's enough that the West is restocking Ukraine. I read, and I have no idea if it's true because everything coming out of there is lies, regardless who is perpetrating it. But that supposedly they shipped Ukraine 17,000 anti-aircraft missiles and anti-tank missiles, which that could totally shift the balance of power. And will Putin accept the loss? That's the question. You
mean a total loss?
Yeah, a total loss.
No. He won't. He'll level the cities that are opposing him if he has to. So yeah.
It'll be far worse with the resupply.
Another unintended consequence. Yeah.
If it's true, and we don't know. And that's why I hasten to caution is everything we think we know here could very well be false. The only thing we do know is that Russia has not planted the Russian flag in Kiev yet. I feel pretty confident because I think we would have found out from somebody if that had happened, right?
Yeah, that doesn't seem to have happened yet, but it's an inevitability if this thing goes on for a while. There's no scenario in which Kiev or which Ukraine beats Russia in a war. That's almost inconceivable. But it could go on for a little while longer. It could be a lot bloodier. A lot of civilians could die. That's all possible. But the end result, I think, is highly likely to be Russia on top militarily and a deal being cut. And I think that's the best we can hope for at this point, because the alternatives are so horrible. That a bad outcome is a great outcome if the alternatives are the extinction of all life on Earth, and that's the kind of thing we're looking at now.
Yeah, well, if they can make the price too high for Russia, right?
I mean, they're definitely inflicting a lot of pain on Russia financially. But remember, Russia was almost the only well-run financial entity on Earth.
Yes, of course.
They don't have much government debt. They've been buying massive amounts of gold.
Yeah.
They're an oil producer in a world where sanctions will never stop the flow of oil. Somebody's going to buy Russian oil. Might be at a discount, but they'll still buy it. So Russia actually might end up making money on this deal, because oil, what was oil today? It was $130 a barrel.
130, and it was heading towards an all-time high. Now it's around 119. Big deal.
So let's say Russia calls up China and says, hey, you can have unlimited oil for $100 a barrel. You think China's going to say no to that? No, they'll say, bring it on here. Let's build a pipeline. And so Russia will actually make a lot of money. They'll make more money than they were making when oil was $70 a barrel.
It's true.
So I don't think you can bring Russia to the point of capitulation with financial sanctions.
Unlikely, because the very things that their economy is dependent upon are the things that are going to go up in price, right? So they wind up with more money, and the whole thing's a mess. Well, I think we beat this horse dead for today. John, make sure you go over to John's site, dollarcollapse.com, sign up for his newsletter. A lot of interesting things there. Maybe this is the time when crypto really comes of age and becomes an alternative financial system. Those who are advocates of the crypto space are certainly expressing that view. I think it's a little too early to tell. In any event, if you got a question for John, shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Sign up for your free newsletter at Financial Survival Network. John, we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, see you, Kerry.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.